Hi, ladies. Welcome to another Encouraging Women podcast with the Custody podcast with me and Adina doing custody for Homegrown Ministries. And if you haven't been there yet, please go to Homegrown Ministries, our branches. We have a lot of things there. That's for you. There must be something for you there, whether you've got sons, daughters, granddaughters, grandsons. Please go there. There's blog posts for everyone. And there's also Uniquely Created, which is where Janine comes in. She's part of the Uniquely Created team. So please, ladies, come and enjoy. Me and Adina's here with Janine, but we're sharing about custody today and shared custody and losing custody, like Adina by now from her novel My Custody Lost. So Adina, if you just want to say hello.
Hi, ladies. I'm so glad to be back this week, and I'm excited to have Janine here because I know she also has an amazing testimony regarding custody and losing custody of your children. So can't wait to hear her testimony.
Yes, for sure. And then Janine, welcome here with us. It's nice to have you. You're our guest this week. The previous podcast, we had Christine, and it was fun to have her. And we thought that it's time for you to come on now. So, Janine, if you can just say a little bit about yourself, tell us where you're from and what you do, and then we can go on with the podcast.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Hello, ladies. My name is Janine from the Afrikaans Ministry at eindelijkhoop.com. And I'm also part of the Uniquely Created branch. So please check us out on the blog. We'd love to see you leave comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. So our podcast has been about custody, and we spoke a little about the previous time. We spoke a little about weekends away with the children and so on. And we want to hear about you. So, Janine, as you know, that Adina wrote the novel for her custody loss. And although your custody was not really decided by the court, if I can remember correctly, it still happened that your oldest son decided, when I think he was in high school, right? When he decided he wanted to go and live with his dad, who was married to someone else at that moment, right? So could you share a bit about that journey of yours with your son? Because I really believe that there's a lot of women out there that would like to hear that testimony, and which will be encouraging for others as well. So thank you, Janine, if you can just say a little bit that.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. I got full custody over my son. He was about 3 years old when we got divorced. And so our document said, our settlement said that his dad will get him every second weekend. But for me, it was very difficult. I didn't want to let my little 3-year-old boy go. And I'm going to have to admit my mistakes because I believe other women will learn out of my mistakes. I remember that first weekend that he had to go, I asked him to please say he doesn't want to go.
Mm.
And that was so wrong of me. I was crying, begging on the other side, begging him not to go. And he was 3 years old. And I have to admit, I put a huge load on his small shoulders. He cried because he wanted to go to his dad. And he took the divorce very difficult. He had a very close bond with his dad. And I had to let him go because our court order said he had to go and visit. And it went on the whole time like that, that I had to let him go to his dad. And I also remember, because I've heard it from other ladies, remember in your mind, you have to let your child go to another lady, the lady that broke up your marriage. And I'm going to admit more mistakes. I would ask him how his weekend was, and I would ask him details. And I have to admit it because it's one of the biggest mistakes I made. And I can't even say, yes, I was young, but it was a huge mistake. So I put that load also on my small little boy, and it caused damage because, of course, he enjoyed visiting his dad. And I tried. I wouldn't want him to go, but he had to go because the court order said that. And he was about, it was when my second born was, I fell pregnant with my ex-husband at that time, his child again, and my eldest son was 9 years old. But luckily that his dad didn't ask that my baby at that time goes there, but more and more my eldest son wanted to be by his dad. And eventually Joe's one day, I can't even remember, I think it was late primary school, that he decided he didn't want to live with me anymore. No matter how I begged, no matter how I threatened I'm going to go to court, he just didn't want to live with me anymore. And I'm going to admit it was my own fault. I cried, I begged, and who wants to be with a mum that cries the whole time? And at that time, I even went into depression and I went to see psychiatrists. I did everything wrong. And I had to drink antidepressants that made me even worse because I was just a depressed mum. So I can't blame my son that he wanted to live with his dad. And in high school, he didn't even come and visit me every second weekend. Now, when he was older, I asked him because if he could have it over, what would he choose? And then he said he would have chosen to live with me because I had rules, and by his dad, there wasn't any rules. I remember later having the fortune to go and pick him up in the morning and take him to school. And there was mornings that he wasn't even there, that he was a high school boy, so he went out with his dad. And then my mother-in-law luckily helped me, but also not luckily. So I mustn't even put that word there in. My mother-in-law helped me to get him back. It wasn't probably even 2 weeks. And he walked away and he phoned his dad to go and live with his dad. And today he's sorry because there wasn't rules, but I handled everything wrong. And I know if I handled it right and just left it to the Lord, it would have been so much different. I would have had my son and input I had in his life, but because I handled it so wrong, crying, begging, and this I also want to mention, the time I was with him, I was so much on his case, pleading him to come home. We were driving on the highway, and this could have turned out so differently. Also fighting, he's a teenager, fighting why doesn't he want to be with me? Because there's rules by me, but he wants to be by his dad where there's no rules. And the next moment he jumped out of the car on the highway.
Sure.
Yes, and it could have turned out differently because he could have been hit by a car. But anyway, it went, like, praise the Lord, the car didn't hit him. And he found his dad and he was by his dad. And when he finished school, and then later, let me first explain this. Later, I reached the point that I realized only the Lord can fix it. So I prayed and the Lord gave me beautiful promises out of his word. And when he was finished with school, I totally left it to the Lord and gave it over to the Lord. Me and his dad got reunited. We got married again. But before that, my son came home. And I remember also having an argument. And he walked out of the house the night. And there I said, Lord, I leave him totally into your hands. And I got there a beautiful promise again. He came back And he said, sorry, Mum. And we never, ever had a huge fight like that again, just because I left him into the Lord's hands. And my child came back home. We remarried later, and things again didn't work out, but I didn't lose my son. And we get along brilliantly. I said the other day, if there's one child that treats me like a queen, it's him. And it's the Lord that brought healing between us. So, yes, thank you.
And I wanna give some what's the word that I'm looking for, encouragement, or to the listeners, because I do think that we put, even you realize that you put a burden on your children that you shouldn't have, or on your son that you shouldn't have, right? But I think in a sense, in the beginning, when we are on our restoration journey, we all do that in some sense, even without us really realizing it. Sometimes just crying in front of them, or showing emotion in front of them, especially when there's another woman involved. Your children can feel your emotions more than we can realize, right? But what I wanted to say is, I want to come back to something, me knowing you, Janine, and knowing your son, how the Lord turned things around. But not just, he grew up in an environment with his dad that wasn't suitable, that we wouldn't deem suitable for any child, right? But I want you to speak a little bit about how your son is now, right? How that changed him, not for the worse, but for good, how the Lord used it for good. Can you just talk a bit about that?
Yes. There was definitely circumstances that he wasn't supposed to be in. But now, I just want to mention this. When he was about 21, he went to a party. And all the teenagers there, I don't know if you call them teenagers anymore, they were 21 years old. They were drinking. There was even a group using drugs. And the next morning, the mum of the 21-year-old that party it was phoned me and said, can you please give me your son's banking details? He was the only one helping me. He was the only one not drinking. He didn't use drugs. And by the way, he left early because that morning it was Mother's Day and he was the only one. The other young men asked him, where are you going? He said, hey, it's Mother's Day. I have to spend Mother's Day with my mum. And he's such a polite young man. He didn't have that example. He goes to work every day. And it's probably going to sound like I'm bragging, but he's a real sweetheart. I remember one day after he had came home, I'm much shorter than he is, and I was telling him something and complaining with him, pointing my finger at him, and he just said, Ma, come here, come here. And he took me in his huge arms and he hugged me and he said, okay, Ma. And he did it so calmly. And I also want to give this encouragement to mums out there worrying about the circumstances not being okay there. Because after I joined RMI, I remember my youngest son, already in high school, his dad asked him to go and visit there. And with my whole heart, I didn't want him to go. But I trusted the Lord this time. And I said to the Lord, you know the circumstances there. It's not okay, even for him to see that example. And you know what? His dad didn't come and pick him up. So I totally believe the Lord intervened and let something happen. He just didn't come and pick his son up. So shows you if you just trust the Lord with the circumstances, even if you don't agree, just give it over to the Lord. So,
yes. And if I can just say something before I give you a chance, Adina, because I want to hear about you, is that for me, it is also giving it over to the Lord in your heart, right? Because let me explain something to you in this case, right? The children had the toughest time at their dad's place because there were circumstances, and it's not like bad things, right? It was just them fighting, and the children aren't used to it. And I never gave it over to the Lord in my heart because I always was thinking that, wow, how can I solve this for the children? How can we do this? And it was like a decision I had to make in my heart to give it over to the Lord. And circumstances started changing that side. It started, and not just them, the circumstances changing, but also my children changing. My children not letting it bother them that much, not letting it hurt them that much. And now they come home and they're like, it was a peaceful weekend. It was a nice, peaceful weekend. And it wasn't anything that I did, but I had to make a change in my heart to let it go in my heart. And it took a time. I mean, ladies, it took years for me to make that shift in my heart. So if you can do it earlier, do it. Then you don't have to make the same mistakes that we did. You don't have to do the same thing. So Adina, although your circumstances, were very different than with Janine, I would like to ask if there's anything that you can relate to, that you can give encouragement to the ladies for that.
Yeah, okay. So what I was thinking about and what he led me to share something about is, because Janine, your son, made the choice. He wanted to go there. And although, my former husband started the process of getting custody of the children, there was a point where my children came to me and they said to me, they want to go and stay there. They love their dad, they're happy there, so they want to go and stay there. And I mean, it's not easy to hear something like that from your children, you know. Um, it broke my heart at that stage, but it's like you have to also let them go, to because we don't, once again, it's about not placing that burden on your children, because they have the burden of, these years they have their dad here and they have their mom there, and they don't want to hurt either one of them, because like in my situation, they have a good relationship with their dad, and he's involved in their lives, and they have a good relationship with me, so you can't expect your children to choose between you, so you have to kind of let them go and have a good time. And it also took me a while, the first year or so, when I had to let them go for weekends or holidays or whatever the case was, it was kind of forced, trying not to cry in front of them, and not asking questions, because sometimes I wanted to ask them questions, but it was like, you know, you know, if you ask questions, you're probably going to hurt yourself by asking questions. So but it was more a mind thing, trying to do this and just doing the right thing. But as my journey progressed, it really became more like a heart thing, where you can let your children go really enthusiastically without forcing it. Even though there's still times where it is difficult, especially when they go on holiday with their dad. So there's still difficult times, but now I can, with all honesty, be enthusiastic for them to go and enjoy their holiday. And when they come back, not to ask questions. If they want to share something that happened, they can share it with me, but I'm not going to ask them anything, I don't want the details.
Yeah.
Because it's just protecting yourself at the end of the day, because you don't want to hear everything. Even now, for me, I mean, if they don't share it with me, something that they enjoyed, or something that happened, then I don't need all the details. I know they enjoyed it, and that's it. So that's something the Lord really changed in my heart. to make it a hard thing and not just,
Yeah.
going through the motions. So, but yeah, it's very difficult, especially if your children, if it's their choice, if, then I think it's even worse and
Yes.
more difficult to let go. Like I said, I heard all of that, but I did let them go. And then now, afterwards, I just found out from what they said, but yeah, they just said it and did it because that's what their dad wanted.
Mm. And,
So,
and for some reason, for my children, I find that it's easier for them. And this is maybe something that we can discuss sometime, right? I find it is easier for them to hurt me than to hurt their dad, right? Because they feel, and I've discussed it with them because I speak openly to my children now that they're teenagers. I don't have to what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't have to worry as much. I can discuss it openly with them, and they discuss it openly with me. And I told them, they said, Mom, it's easier because we know you can handle it. They think they think I can handle it. They're like, Dad doesn't know. He doesn't go to the Lord. We know you go to the Lord. You can handle it. And it was difficult for me to hear, because I felt like hurt because I wanted to say, but I cannot handle it. But yeah, they think I can. And that's sometimes something that as moms, we don't always realize now, that the children instinctively tell us the truth because they think we can handle it. And that's okay. I think it's a good thing, although it hurts. I'd rather have the hurt than not hear the truth from my children. But something that you said about not asking questions, Adina, is that my children are now at a place where they overshare, right? They tell me every little thing without me asking any questions. I never asked questions because you don't want to hear things, right? So I think that letting go in your heart is a very, very important thing, because when your children start sharing, it's difficult for you to be neutral about it, to just listen, to not say anything, to not voice your opinion and say something that shouldn't be said, because it just happened a few weeks ago, where my daughter was sharing something with me and I can't even remember what it was. So it's not that I'm not sharing, it's just that I can't even remember what it was. And I said something I shouldn't have said. And I could see that she didn't want to hear that. She didn't want to hear me saying that. And I was like, oh, I should have been quiet and just listened to her, right? Because I don't want to discourage them from sharing, because they obviously want to say things to me, right? But I also don't want to take part in the sharing, if that makes, I guess it's just this asking questions, right? It's just like trying to ask questions and things like that, to just let them share if they want to share, but not to, not to say like, because in the beginning it was just like, did you have a good weekend? Yes, we did. And then that's the end of it. But when they started sharing, and that may come in your relationship, especially when you're homeschooling, right? Because we got a very closer relationship when I started homeschooling the children. So when they did start sharing, it was things that I didn't really want to hear, but I needed to keep quiet and let them do it, because it's a process. And really to remember, I think one of the things, Adina, that you mentioned was to remember that they were thrown into this situation. They never asked for any of this. It wouldn't have been their choice. They were thrown into a situation, and how can we put them first in this case? Like put them first, because they need to be first in any decision that we make, because we didn't put them first when our marriage fell apart, right? Although it may not have been our mistake, it may not have been through what we did, still the children didn't come first from us, because if they did come first, the marriage would have been, if that makes any sense. And maybe you, the listener there, feels that it wasn't your fault, you didn't have any fault in it, but still remember, if you didn't have a fault, how much more your children didn't have a choice in this, how much more them, and how much more should they be placed, first in your thoughts. And I mean the Lord, of course, first. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm sure that you understand what before your feelings. Can I say that? So let's, before your feelings, think of them and how they must feel. And that's where I want to come, because Adina, you started not asking questions, and also, letting them go. But Janine, there is something that I really want you to share with the ladies that that I remember you shared with me, and it really, really touched my heart, and it made me think of things. And it's the weekends away, right, when they're away with their dad, and how you approach that, and how you should be approaching it, and what you should be doing, and everything we did wrong, even knowing, I knew exactly, I knew the principles, I knew RMI's principles, but there were a lot of weekends where I messed up very badly, which I shouldn't have, right? Even knowing the right thing to do. And his grace is just so wonderful for us, right? But I want you to talk a bit about that, and just tell us a bit about the weekends away.
You know what? We're so consumed in our own pain that we tend to forget about our children's pain, that I feel is much worse, because they've got the mum one side, the dad the other side, and then we're actually letting them have to choose where they don't have to choose. And I remember my weekends consisted, every second weekend consisted of crying. And I wanted him also, and I have to share this part, I wanted my ex-husband at that time to think I'm having a jaw. So, because so I played games between the crying. So I wanted him to think she's really going on with her life. So when I lived in a flat at that time. So I would see to it that my child's suitcase is in the boot of my car, because my game was, he must think I'm also going away for the weekend. And it did upset him, but it was games. Where are you going to get with games? So when I would open the boot, I would have my big suitcase in the boot. And it's funny now, it was really, those plans didn't work. So I'd open the boot and he'd be asking, where am I going? Okay, I wouldn't tell him because I wasn't actually going anywhere. I'd give my son suitcase, and when he left, I'd take that empty suitcase up to the flat and cry, because that's what I did. So it anyway backfired, because I was all alone. And yeah, I want to say this to the women. You have to put your children first, but firstly, put the Lord first. And the only way you can do it, if you have this real intimate relationship with him, not religion. Because when I look back, I did pray, I did go to church. I've never been so much in a church than that time. But now that I look back, I realize it was all religion. It wasn't that real intimate relationship with the Lord. Because if I had that, I'm close to him now, and I still make mistakes. But now I can run to him with my mistakes. He's here with me. I can tell him everything. While if my child's dad wants to pick him up, I can tell him, please walk with me. I can't do this alone. Otherwise, I'm going to want to say my say to him. And if you do it with the Lord while you've got a real intimate relationship with him, it's totally different. And you're probably still going to make mistakes, but you do it hand in hand with him and say, Lord, my love, I messed up now. And he's the one fixing it. Because this I also want to mention, through all my mistakes, my children could have turned out totally different. And they're not turning out so well behaved and with the beautiful manners and everything because of me. It's because of all His grace and His love that He's turning the situation around. So, yes.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think one of the things, because something that I asked myself earlier on was, how do I know whether it's religion or whether it's relationship? And ladies, can I give you some way that you can discern when that car leaves? And I want to tell something, Janine, I learned from your mistakes, but let me tell you my own mistake. But first, when that car leaves with your children, do you go in your home and you start praying for your marriage to be restored? You start praying for everything, that you wanted to pray for? Or you come into your home and you say, so what are we going to do this weekend? We're alone, it's just the two of us. What are we going to do this weekend? Yes, the house is quiet without the children, but how can I use this time to be with you? Right. And I think that's where you see the difference, because we're all there. Where we go inside our house, we start praying for our marriage to be restored. We take our Bible and we look at everything that we can say over all works, right? All works and things that we try to do. But then having that relationship is coming into the house and saying, wow, the house is quiet without the children, but what can we do? How can we spend time together? What can I do to spend time with you? Now that the children is not with me, I can take advantage and just, talk to you the whole day without, sounding like a mad person, which the children doesn't worry, because, they're used to me talking talking to the Lord. So it's not that bad, because they used to, and that's probably one of the advantages of not having a man in the house, because it's fine if the children thinks you're a bit crazy talking to yourself. But what I wanted to say is, I learned from your mistake, Janine. What I did, let me tell you what I did, is I always had the car in the driveway, so it looks like I'm going somewhere. So when my car is in the garage, everyone knows I'm not going anywhere, but when it's in the driveway, I'm on my way out. But I always go somewhere. So I would come and visit you, or I would go somewhere, right? So I did go somewhere. I didn't not go, but was it really necessary for me to take the car out of the garage at that stage? I could have waited, right? But I did want to give that hint that I'm going somewhere. and it's just so unnecessary, right? It's unnecessary. And it was good for me to go places, especially later on, when I started to get to know people again, because in the beginning it's good to be alone, because you get that relationship with the Lord. But it was good for me to get out a bit and not be caught up in the house all the time, until now I don't mind either way. Go out, stay in, it's fine either way. But it was good for me, but I shouldn't have flaunted it. I shouldn't have, that's really not something that I should have done. And it was mistakes on my side as well. And although he would never really ask if I would go somewhere, I could see that he wanted and he wanted to ask it. So it's so unnecessary. Now thinking back, I'm thinking of, it was so unnecessary, ladies. And if you can skip that period, totally, I would really, really recommend it. I would really recommend that you don't do that, that you use every day wisely. I'm gonna probably say it 100 times, that every time that we're with a Tara who's got a restored marriage, she always tells us, make the best of the time that you have with the Lord alone, because you're going to miss it when you don't have it anymore. So really, ladies, if I can just encourage you, learn from our mistakes and skip this period, and then and yes, there are times when you're going to cry. There are times when things just fall apart, and it's not necessarily because you don't have a restored, but it's difficult to be alone, a mother raising your children. But when you do it with the Lord, even those times that you feel, oh, I'm not sure if I can do this, everything's breaking down, things are happening, even then, you look back and you see those were good times. Those were good times. Those were times that was really good. So definitely, I believe that if you do it with the Lord, it's just so much easier than us just making mistakes, And like I said, I knew all the principles from the beginning to the end, but I still tried to get my way here and there. So definitely, Adina. I know that you were very good with this. You were very good with not asking your children questions and things like that. So if you can just share a bit for the ladies, that they can just see it's really the thing to do, because it's really good for your children.
Yes, so I mean, it's good for yourself as well. It's
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, in the beginning, I didn't ask questions for myself. I must admit, it's not because I was so perfect on my journey in the beginning. I did it more to protect myself, which was at that stage maybe not a bad thing. I never played games, I must say. I wanted to, but it's not that I'm perfect and I didn't think about it, but praise the Lord, He always stopped me, from doing anything like that. But yes, I had a desire, but it's all Him. It's just Him that stopped me from. But so like I said, in the beginning, it was for me as well to be protected. Maybe that He helped me to not ask questions, because you do want to, and especially in the beginning, it's like you want to know everything. But He stopped me because He knows because it's good for you not to know. He's protecting you. So embrace that protection. And, as my journey progressed, I just stopped wanting to know. It's
Yes.
like, I'm honestly not interested. If there's something I should know that involves the children or is affecting my children, I'm trusting the Lord to show me and to reveal it to me. And there was small things, nothing major, just small things that He did show. But then again, I was in a situation, what do I do about it? Am I going to talk about it? Am I going to talk to my former husband about it? Or what am I going to do? But there as well, He led me to just talk to him about it and not talk to my former husband or anyone else about it, and to just let it go and surrender it, like you shared, to surrender that into His hands, and not me trying to fix something that, I shouldn't be trying to fix. So, and also, like Yvonne, like you shared about the weekends, when, in the beginning, yes, you cry and you pray and you fast and, for restoration or for the pain to go away. But now it's also like, I'm excited for the weekends I'm alone at home, because I know, He's with me and He will lead me. If we don't just want to do nothing the whole weekend, then that's what He leads me to do, then, we can do that. And if He leads me to go somewhere or visit my family or my brother, then we do that. So I see the weekends alone now as something positive. I don't see it as, this dreaded thing that it was in the beginning. So it's just, but it's, the Lord also knew with me, I first had to find RMI before, all of this happened in my life, before the divorce went through and before they started to visit their dad over weekends, and then, the custody case. He knew I first had to find RMI and find Him as my best friend, my heavenly husband, before. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been good. I would have made terrible mistakes, so yeah, I'm just internally grateful for him stepping in at the right time, exactly the right time. So yeah.
Definitely. And what I found, and I'm sure it's the same for both of you, is that when you don't do those negative things, like wanting to ask questions, and you stop yourself before you ask the question, you stop yourself before you do that. And it's only His grace, right? You can't do it in your own strength. But once you do that, the second time it gets easier, the third time it gets even more easier. And after that, it's like you said, Adina, you totally lose the will to ask. You don't even want to ask anymore, it just goes away. And that's a good thing. And Janine, I see you, please say something, because yes.
Yes, I just want to say to the ladies, if you're new on this journey, don't start the first time by asking, because it can become a terrible habit. Like snooping on Facebook to watch the other ladies' Facebook page. It becomes a habit that you then have to get rid of. And the only way you can let go of that bad habit is through the Lord. So don't even start that habit.
Yes. And this is custody now, but I want you to give a testimony, Janine, about sending messages, right? Because I know this is a custody podcast, but it comes down to the same thing of starting the habit. And Adina was good to never start that habit. And because she never really started that habit, it was easy for her to get over it. But Janine, it wasn't that easy for you, right? So please tell the ladies, because I agree with you. Once you start the habit, and that's something that happens in the mind, because I had the same struggle. Once I started a habit, it was just so difficult for me to stop and to not do it anymore, and it was in the mind, it was just my mind, but it was still a habit that needed to be broken. So Janine, if you want to say something about that.
I did from the start, and I'm going to admit it, I did everything wrong. I begged him not to leave me, and after he left me, I begged him with text messages. I phoned him like crazy, and it became such a bad habit that I remember my sister-in-law telling me to try with a diary to mark a day 1 by not phoning him. Day 2, I got to 30 days because I was in this bad habit. And after that 30 days, I started again because I had this desire to phone him, to beg him, and do everything wrong. And even watch the other lady's Facebook page. And I really, really struggled, battled with it. And if you do stuff like that, the enemy's going to come and show you how happy they are and how good it's going with them. And that's a real difficult habit to break. It was first later in my life that I could stop by not phoning him, not begging. And can I tell you, the relief, because I later said he became my drug of choice. It was like an addiction. And I remember going to a psychiatrist from my work because my workplace sent me there. And the psychiatrist said, this man must be made of gold because he's your beginning, he's your end, he's all you talk about. And it was like that. It was this bad addiction. And now, first, I don't want to talk about him anymore. I don't live for him anymore. It's the Lord that I live for. And can I tell you the relief? And again, my advice is don't ever start it. Don't text him, and we will quickly say, or because we're so consumed in our own minds and our own hurt that you'll feel it's the Lord that said I must text him. I felt it the whole time. You must first do it, because
Yeah.
the moment you leave it for the Lord, he's going to do the work. If I remember that picture the Lord gave me about the salad. How you hiring, you've got this party and you want to hire this chef and the chef, but you're so busy in the salad, but it's a brilliant chef. And that's the picture the Lord gave me. So you're so busy, you want to help the chef. So you actually want to help the Lord because he's not making as quick as you want him to make it. And so you're busy helping the chef, and the chef eventually says, okay, you go forward. You cut up the salad. And then the next moment, people come running and say, the party's going to start. You better get finished. And you realize, I'm not going to get this salad finished. And then eventually you look at the chef and say, sorry, can you please take over? And that's what we do with the Lord. I made a mess. And every time in my life I made a mess, I said, Lord, can you please help now and take over? And then I'll step back. But what he showed me is get out of the way. You just build on your relationship with him and get out of the way.
Yes, because you're not helping, right? You're hindering. And that's the thing. We're not helping. And like Adina said, because Adina said something earlier, she said, if there's something that we need to know, the Lord will show us. You know, we shouldn't restrict him because he knows what we need to know when we need to know it. And in the beginning, I heard everything, not through my children, but through my former husband. And it really hurts so much. So if you can get away from not hearing anything, please, it's for your own protection. And when you need to know something, he'll show you, because there was this one thing, right? Where, and I'm going to tell you because I don't think you don't have to hear it. There was this, so the children's uncle, he took his own life, and the children were still very young, and I didn't want them to find out because, you know, they were too young to know. You're right. So I told them he's not here with us anymore, and I'm not going to tell you how he died. We will talk about that later when you're a bit older. You're just too young. And they were fine with it. They accepted that. But then they found out at their dad's place. But we had like an arrangement. We're not going to tell the children, but I don't know how they found out. And it doesn't even matter, but they found out. And so now they had all of these questions, but I wasn't asking the children questions. So I didn't know that they knew, but they were walking around with these questions. And probably it was the Lord that made them come to me and say, Mom, we're so sorry. We know you didn't want us to know, but we found out, you know. And if I reacted in anger, then it would have stopped them from telling me anything that bothered them, right? But it was, again, just the Lord. It wasn't me. I can take absolutely no credit. And I was angry, but I didn't show the children, right? I was angry, but I didn't talk to anyone about it. I just kept it between me and the Lord. I was angry. And I said, you know what? Let's take a walk, because I'm sure you've got questions. And they had a million questions. And we took a walk, and I was able to talk to them. I was able to, you know, put them at rest and explain everything to them. And it was just the Lord's way of doing it, because he knew my children needed answers. They needed to have peace in their heart with everything that's happened. It wouldn't have been that way if I made an issue about it, if I phoned their dad, if I made, you know, told them, why did you tell? Why? The children would have never said anything to me again. And the Lord knew that the children needed to know some things. They needed to have some questions answered. That was on their heart. That was giving them sleepless nights, which I didn't know, you know, but it was really, and that's why children of that age shouldn't be knowing these things, because of course they don't understand. They don't, you know, now that they're older, they understand a bit better. But they didn't know then. So they had all of these questions. And had I handled the situation differently, and I was angry, I'm not going to lie to you, ladies, I was angry. But if I handled the situation differently, the children would have never told me anything that, you know, that bothered them ever again. So definitely, and there was something that I handled spectacularly different, that I shouldn't have handled that way, that I phoned their dad, and that was something else. And And all I did was I made more of a mess instead of, doing it correctly. And maybe it was good that I made that mess earlier so that I could see what mess I made so that I didn't do it again. That when it really, really mattered for the children, I didn't do it again. I didn't do it that way. So, I learned from my mistakes, but it's easier. Let's rather learn from others' mistakes than from our own, right? So if we can tell you, ladies, please don't. And Adina, if you want to say something in to end our podcast, it was so nice to have you on here, Janine, and Adina, to have you here. So if you can say anything to close out this podcast for us. Janine, maybe you want to say something, and then we'll end with Adina. We'll say goodbye.
I just want to say I made the many mistakes so that others can learn out of my mistakes, not make so many mistakes. I did everything wrong. But yes, so that they can learn really out of our mistakes. So that you don't later have to mention all your mistakes. You're probably going to make mistakes along the road, but learn out of our mistakes, because we are the example to our children. And
Yes.
we don't want to go later. Like I had to go to the Lord and say, help. I really, really made a mess of everything. There's very little mistakes I didn't make. And now I had to go to him and say, help, fix, please fix all my mistakes, which he is doing. But imagine not making those mistakes. But yes, it's all because of his grace. So thank you.
So I would like to end off this podcast by saying that, nothing on this journey is easy, and we cannot do it on our own. We need the Lord, either as your best friend or your heavenly Father or your heavenly husband. We need him. We cannot do it. Sorry, ladies. He must be our strength, when we are weak in this process. And I know it's difficult because, in the beginning of the journey, we are so hurt and desperate that it's sometimes easy to forget about our children and what they are going through. But don't put the burden on them, to share with you what's going on the other side, or making it difficult for them to go and see their dad, when they do want to honestly see their dad, because it's their dad. It doesn't matter what happened, it's their dad. And it's not for us to, stand in the way or make it difficult for them or make them feel guilty about wanting to see their dad. So just use the time that you have alone. Use it to spend it with the Lord. You can turn that weekends that seems to be so empty and lonely, and you can take it and you can turn it around into something beautiful, where you can just have a weekend with him where you are at peace, where you can lie down in green pastures and just be in his presence and follow his lead, as he leads you to, if he leads you to do something. But that's what I want to share. Just lean on him and hold his hand. And yeah, that's what I think, that's the most important thing on this journey.
Yeah, and I think something as well is, don't feel guilty to get excited about having a weekend alone, right? Because in the beginning, when I started to get excited, I felt guilty because I was like, don't I want my children with me? But of course I want my children with me. But I do get excited about having a weekend alone, to just be me and the Lord. So enjoy that. And ladies, I think I want to close off with something like, if you've listened to everything and you've heard everything that we've done, and you're like, I've done all of these things and more, right? Know that there is hope for you. There's always hope for you. You can still change everything. You can turn everything around, but not on your own. You can only do it by having that relationship with the Lord. Nothing is unfixable. when it comes to the Lord, right? He loves a challenge. So please go to him and have that relationship with him, and know that doesn't matter what you did, if you did everything wrong, he's still there to help you fix everything. And if you were, one of the few that did everything right, know that, he's there with you, and you